hospitals are civilian objects, civilian buildings, which are ordinarily protected from any kind of military attack. If they are used by the military forces of one of the parties, then that can make them a military objective, which can potentially be attacked by the other side. If that's the case, then other rules of international humanitarian law still have to be respected, including critically that the armed forces must not launch an attack if it would cause excessive civilian casualties relative to the military advantage anticipated from that strike. So for that reason, extra special care has to be taken in any decisions about targeting a hospital, particularly when there are hardly any hospitals left operating, and it would need to be a very important military objective to justify launching any kind of operation. And once that operation is launched, the greatest care would have to be taken to spare civilian casualties in the area. Certainly, the International Court of Justice has held that threats emanating from territory occupied by a state do not give rise to a right of self-defense. In relation to Gaza, the United Nations still regards Gaza as being under Israeli occupation. So the same legal argument would apply in relation to attacks coming from Gaza as well. I think Francesca's point is not that Israel has no right to protect its people, but rather that there's a different legal basis for those kinds of protective operations. So international humanitarian law, of which the law of occupation is a part, does enable occupying powers like Israel to take security measures to protect civilians from armed violence by armed groups. So that includes both law enforcement, policing type powers, but it also includes the power to conduct hostilities or military operations against non-state armed groups who cannot be stopped by ordinary policing or law enforcement means. I mean, humanitarian law prohibits the use of indiscriminate means or methods. That includes using very large explosive munitions, like the kinds of large bombs dropped from the air by Israel in densely populated urban areas. So I think that there is good evidence of indiscriminate attacks. And I think Israel hasn't been exercising sufficient care to spare civilians from the effects of hostilities. What I'd also add, of course, is that Israel, for most of the last month, has imposed a near complete siege and blockade on Gaza. It has an obligation under humanitarian law to allow the passage of humanitarian relief necessary for the survival of civilians. And if it doesn't do that, then it could well be committing the war crime of intentionally starving a civilian population. In relation to the West Bank, yes, I think there does seem to be mounting credible evidence of a pattern of arbitrary detentions, excessive use of violence, cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment against prisoners, a lack of adequate due process and judicial control of detention. I think that's part of a long pattern of those kinds of activities in the West Bank, but it has accelerated in recent weeks. So if Gaza is occupied territory, as the United Nations suggests, then there are powers available to an occupying power to evacuate civilians for their own safety or for imperative military reasons related to the fighting in the conflict. But if civilians are evacuated, they have to be provided with all of the essentials to maintain a dignified life. And of course, none of that has been done by Israel. Even if Gaza were not occupied, there's an obligation to give effective warnings of military operations, which again implies that a reasonable period of time must be allowed for civilians to move safely under humane conditions. Again, I don't think that was satisfied by the way in which Israel gave the warnings and essentially compelled people to move from the north of Gaza. The International Criminal Court has been investigating the situation in Palestine for a number of years. That investigation has been proceeding very slowly compared to the speed with which the International Criminal Court addressed the situation in the war in Ukraine, and already issued arrest warrants in relation to that war within the space of a year. So there has been a concern about the legitimacy and credibility of the International Criminal Court in the way it doesn't seem to treat situations equally when there seems to be strong evidence of war crimes in different kinds of conflict. Under the Geneva Conventions, all countries also have an obligation to ensure respect for humanitarian law by other countries. Now, I know the United States has been putting pressure on Israel to take more care in targeting civilians and to allow more humanitarian relief to get into Gaza. But that hasn't been enough pressure because at the same time, the US Defense Secretary has publicly stated that the US is providing weapons and military aid to Israel unconditionally. So I think it's absolutely not using all the influence it has over Israel to try to compel Israel to respect humanitarian law. I don't think Israel can be left to resume a full occupation of Gazan territory indefinitely, like it has had in the West Bank for so long as well. I think there does need to be action by the international community, for example, through some kind of collective security force or a United Nations peace operation in Gaza to ensure that civilian life and governance is restored for the Palestinian people in Gaza, and also to prevent violence against civilians and war crimes, including those targeting Israeli civilians.